Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Earful Tower podcast, where I happen to be sitting in the studio right now on a rainy day in Paris with Camille from French Today. Hello.
Bonjour, Oliver.
Ça va?
Ouais, ça va et toi?
Not bad. You know, you've been calling me Olivier all day, and as soon as we hit record, you switch back to Oliver.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Which confused me because you were speaking French at the time.
Well, you know what? The thing is that when we were talking earlier, I was not being recorded. And so right now, I'm so scared about speaking English like that in front of listeners. You have no idea.
It's great because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about for this episode.
Me being scared?
You being scared and me being scared. Actually.
Okay.
But I hope to paint a little bit of a picture, because I think people like to feel like they're in Paris with us.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the little... maybe people are listening here for the first time.
Yes.
So in this podcast, which is brought to you by French Today, by Camille and her French audiobooks, we're sitting here in the studio on a really rainy day. I hope you can hear it in the background, because we're in the maids' quarters, the chambre de bonne.
Oui.
And I've got a question straight away. I heard someone call it a chambre à bonne the other day.
It's a grammatical mistake that is very common, but try not to imitate it. When you say, for example, le livre de Camille, okay, Camille's book, le livre de Camille, you're supposed to use de. So it's une chambre de bonne. But it's a very common mistake to use a and say, for French people, I mean, I'm not talking about a mistake that English speakers would make, but a mistake that French people make themselves.
So they say it as well.
Yeah, so they say, I've never heard chambre à bonne, but they would say le livre à Camille instead of le livre de Camille, and I guess that's the same mistake.
So if the French people can't learn their own language, how are we supposed to? Anyway, what we're going to talk about today, and chambre de bonne is the maid's quarters, which is what we're in. Little tiny studio in the rooftops of Paris, and the rain's falling on the open windows. So now you're in the room with us.
Yes.
And we're talking with Camille. The idea is she's going to sort of walk through how to get over that vulnerability, the embarrassment, the difficulties of speaking in a foreign language like French. And all the while, as we're talking, remember FrenchToday.com, and if you go /earful6, you'll get a further 10% discount off all the audiobooks. But now you're in the room, Camille. Let's get on with it. Let's start with a really basic thing. Do you find that a lot of people learning French have this sort of insurmountable feeling of sort of nervous embarrassment when they're trying to speak?
Yes, it's an absolute normal feeling. It would be really weird if you didn't feel, the pressure when you're talking in another language, especially for people who, I would say, the more educated, the more witty in your own language you are, the more you rely on your own language to express your sense of humor, your culture, all that, the more it's going to be difficult to accept the baby steps that you're going to be taking in another language. And it's only human to feel this way, and it's an extremely humbling experience to learn another language, be it French or any other language, because you can't represent yourself. And if you think of it, when you talk to someone, of course you have your face, your smile, and the way you interact. But for many, many people, your voice and also your sense of humor, the cultural references that you're going to be making, language is a really strong point for human beings. It's maybe essential to human beings. It may or be the core of our nature to represent ourselves through a language. And when you learn another language, you cannot do that at all. So it's a big part to let go, and that's also the problem that a lot of French learners are facing, is that when you start actually to learn a language, you have to accept that you won't be able at first to carry on that true person that you are, and that wit and that culture. At first, you need to really simplify, super simplify, and just say, okay, what is the core that I want to say?
Yeah.
I want to say, I want coffee, please.
Yeah.
I can't say, oh, wouldn't it be delightful
Yeah.
if you could be kindly bringing me a
Right, right.
delightful aroma of the god?
But not even that. But not even that. Like when I order a coffee in I don't know, Australia or America or
Yeah.
something, I know that I do it in many different ways,
Uh-huh.
just because I like English and I like the fact that you can say. Not even like that example you said was quite eloquent and beautiful language, but also on the other hand, you might say something like, you know, by God, I could go for a cup of Joe right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's kind of funny and showing a bit of your personality. And so it's, you know what, like I wonder in this therapy session that we're having right now, Camille, is for the longest time, I used to hate feeling stupid, right? Like it used to be the worst thing for me. I used to hate not knowing things or coming across as I didn't know things. And I think when you speak a foreign language, you feel kind of dumb because you're not your own person. But in English, I managed to get over it, especially with this show, helped a lot because I like, because I know a lot of listeners out there, maybe you out there right now are thinking the same thing, is a guest will say something and I'll be like, I don't know what that is. And it's a really nice feeling when you can accept that you can just ask someone, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain it? But it's harder in French because they might answer. You might not even know what they're talking about still.
And the thing is actually what you're telling me, it's essential because in the language you have the words that you use, but you also have your tone. And very often I feel that people do not understand a foreigner when they speak, not so much because the words they use, but because they hesitate. And therefore, first of all, they speak way too low. They don't, because they're scared, so they start to speak like that.
Yeah.
And you can't hear them.
Yeah.
So my first advice is the contrary than everybody's been telling you, but be loud. You know, actually keep the personal conversation, the laugh, and so on. We tend to explode much more. It has to do with the language, like the p, t, k, which I'm not going to scream to the microphone right now.
You'll
'cause
break
you'll
everyone's
hear it,
eardrums
exactly.
if you did it. Yeah.
But in English, p, t, k are much stronger. So by nature, the language is more explosive. So the personal conversation, when you speak English, the laughter, try in, you know, like a public place, a restaurant and so on, to be aware of the ambience of the room and maybe turn it down a little bit. But when you're speaking French, on the contrary, you know, even if you're shy, please speak loud, like you're doing theater, like you want the other person on the other side of this room to hear
Wow,
you.
that's quite counterintuitive for a shy person, though.
Yeah, I know. It is. Anyway, there is one fact which is really, really important when you learn a language. It is not going to be easy. It's not going to flow naturally. You're going to be making an effort all the time at first. The more you do it, the easier it will become. But right now, you know, we're talking about learning a language and so on. English is not my first language, in case you were wondering, audience. So my accent is so wonderful that, oh, but this Camille, she must be American. Well, I am from nationality. I have the double nationality. But as you can hear, yes, English is not my first language. And it is terrifying for me to do these recording live shows, you know, where I hear myself make mistakes. I hear myself make grammar mistake. I hear myself hesitate. Each time I hesitate, you listener will hear me hesitate for 1 second. I feel that it's been 10 minutes and I've been like, go.
Well, I know, firstly, I've got to interrupt here. I know, firstly, that a lot of listeners have got in touch to say they love you and they love your work.
Oh, thank you.
And they love hearing you on this podcast. And I like to think that they're very tolerant of any pauses because you are doing exactly what you're teaching them to do in your language.
Absolutely. And that's why I can teach, because I have this experience. I know what you guys are going through. I lived it. I lived 18 years in the US.
That's right.
I know what it is to not be able to represent yourself, to not be able to apply your wit, your smart, Actually, we had a running joke with my husband, whose name is Olivier.
Hello, Olivier, if you're listening. If you're listening, hello, send in an email, Olivier. Yes, sorry, go on.
So Olivier and I, we have exactly the same sense of humor and exactly the same kind of mind, which is pretty much in the gutter, I have to admit. And we like to do, you know, some puns and jokes and so on. And it is so frustrating because when we are in an English environment, for me to have the time to get to the joke, Olivier has said it before I have.
Yeah, right.
Or even worse, sneaky. I have an idea. I turn to him, I say, how do you say this word? And then he steals it and he says it. And so to our friend, he's the funny one, and he's funny, I have to admit he's funny. But when we're in France, it's the contrary. I think faster, or I react, I would say, faster in French. And so in France, I'm the funny girl.
Personalities.
I'm the funny guy.
Yeah. Isn't that weird to have different personalities in different languages?
Yeah.
I think I said it to you before on one of our episodes about the idea of Australian Oliver and French Oliver, and wondering whether they'll ever meet or whether they'll ever be on the same playing field.
And I have the same thing. I'm such a foul mouth in English. I swear a lot in English.
We talked about this before. When you were in Boston, you said something really inappropriate.
Absolutely.
At a post office, was it?
Yeah. And where we
Don't
were...
say it again, Camille. I'll have to change. I'll have to change the rating of this episode.
When we were sitting earlier in a coffee, I think that I swore at least 4 or 5 times during our conversation. And I never swear in French.
Weird.
And absolutely never... I mean... Yeah, if I bang my toe really hard against the bed, I might. But otherwise, I don't swear. I don't revert to swearing. But in English, it feels that my emotion, I can't convey the strength. And so I swear to give more strength to what I want to say. And then it's terrible. I swear all the time. I can't stop.
Well, hey, look, that's English-speaking Camille, and we love her anyway. But I want to get back to. There's a few things I want to touch on. I want to keep coming back to this vulnerability, difficult word to pronounce even for an English speaker.
I can't
Vulnerability. A lot of syllables. Great Scrabble score, probably. And this lack of confidence, because I think it's something that affects everybody, from someone who comes here and is maybe too scared to even say bonjour to the baker, but all the way up to people who, like, how about this? We start with a story that I started telling you in the cafe, but I stopped because I figured we'd save it. I was playing basketball the other night, as most of my stories seem to begin with. And so I'll set the scene so that everyone can feel how I felt. There was a guy I know who's a YouTuber, and they were filming YouTube videos on the court next to us. And I wanted to say to him, I said to him, do you know those guys? He said, yes. And I wanted to say a sentence along the lines of, I bet all the YouTube community who plays basketball knows each other. Something like that, which maybe isn't that hard for some people, maybe harder for others. And I got the first bit done. And then when I got to the end of the sentence, knows each other, I just drew a total blank. I couldn't think of anything. And I mumbled something, so I didn't speak loud, like you said. And I don't remember what I said. But whatever I said, he just looked at me blank, and he said, quoi? Like what? And then I thought, okay, you can't say knows each other. I think I said se connaît, which I understand is right. Is that the right thing to say?
You said, what you said earlier in the coffee, and I'm sure that's what you said se connaissent.
Right, okay.
Okay. Je pense que ils se connaissent tous. Or là, je pense qu'ils se connaissent.
Right, yeah, okay. And that's correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I can tell you what the guy heard.
Tell me.
Okay?
Is it rude?
Because you were... Well, yeah.
Oh,
so I'm sorry, I'm going to swear in French.
Okay, everybody, if you got kids in the room, kick them out of the room. In fact, leave them for the rest of the episode in that other room. Yeah, what did I say?
You were mumbling, and you were not sure of yourself.
Guilty, yeah.
So, and also maybe because you're an English speaker, you pronounced the consonant a little bit stronger, so the k. And the person heard se connasse.
Okay.
You probably said connasse.
Which is a swear word, isn't
and
it?
connasse is slut, something like that.
So that's what I said to him?
Yeah.
So I said I bet all the YouTube basketballers are sluts? Is that what I said?
And that's the problem, is that people who are not accustomed to speaking to other people who might have an accent, it's really something that's really difficult to get, is how somebody could jump to connasse when you are a polite person,
I am a polite
talking
person.
to them.
I'm quite disappointed by this.
Yeah, and Konas has nothing to do in that.
Well, that explains why he looked at me
in that
like
environment.
that.
Yeah.
So I told that story. No, I didn't think that I'd said that. This wasn't me trying to be funny. That's actually what I said, and that explains why he looked at me weird. I just thought he didn't understand. But so I tried to say it, and then my mind went, okay, I said something wrong. Change it. What's another way to say it? Okay, say, are you friends with them? Which makes me sound dumb.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't think of the word for friends because I thought of the Swedish word for friends.
Yeah.
Then I started thinking about Ross and Chandler and Joey and the... I went on this huge tangent, and this is how it happened. He looked at me, and I panicked. So, and I didn't speak English. Usually I'd just say know each other, but I knew this guy didn't speak English. So we had this weird thing, and then eventually I was like, sont amis, like that. And then he sort of he went off and played basketball on the other end of the court. It was really weird, and it hurt my confidence.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I'm so sorry that it happened to you, but it has happened to me so many times. And I'm sure our audience can totally relate, because if you learn another language, if you sometimes speak another language, it has happened to you for sure. And it is crazy what happens to our human mind when we panic. There's two solutions. Either we draw a total blank, we freeze, and there's absolutely nothing coming to our mind.
Yep.
Or our mind goes to the weirdest place, like you said, friends, and then suddenly you're with Rachel and Joey.
Yeah, I was in a happy place from the 90s. A safe place.
So I had this story, which to me, of course, is the same thing. I was with some friends, and where were we again? Well, sometimes somewhere in the US, and we had a beautiful view, and we were going up the mountain, and my friend said, "Oh, we're gonna go up the mountain so we can see more." I heard "see more," and I went to the little rocky picture house of, and in my head, I had this musical, "Here I am, Seymour," blah, blah, blah. And I was obsessed by this giant plant eating everybody, and Seymour.
Sounds like a dream.
And and I promise you, I had not smoked, I had not taken anything, but my brain just got overtaken by this parasite idea that had nothing to do with our context. There was no plant around us, no musicals, but in my head, a musical, full show, like Broadway, da 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 da.
Yeah, your brain went off that way. Crazy.
And I think that's what our brain does when we are in a perilous situation. It wants to find a solution and goes everywhere. And that's really panic. Yeah. And that's what we feel in another language when we feel inappropriate. There's this, it's terrible. It really affects your self-esteem. Mm. You feel so vulnerable, and you feel shame really, because
which is
you feel you should know.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Isn't that weird? Yeah. I read something that if they'd said be kind to people who speak with a foreign accent because they've learned your language and they dare to speak it.
Exactly.
And I thought that was really nice.
And that was going to be my point, actually. It's not you who should feel shame that you didn't know how to say it. On top of that, you knew how to say it. It's he who should feel shame that he was not able to understand and jump to Konas when there's absolutely no reason for you to treat him of slut in this nice... There's no reason why he should assume. No. He should give you the benefit of the doubt.
He should have helped.
And his brain should go to all his extremity to try to understand what... Okay, he's using this number of syllables.
And then
what
correct
could he
me
be
gently.
Saying?
Yeah, I love when people correct me.
Yeah, I have another, it happens also if you think of it now. I'm sure that it has happened to you in your own language,
right?
Where somebody who had a slightly different accent, maybe you're Australian, so maybe the other person was, English from England or something, and you speak the same language, but yet you could not understand them, and it all boils down to that. Did you give that person the benefit of the doubt? Are you a kind enough spirit that you actually did the effort to try to understand what this person was telling you? Or did you assume that this person was stupid because they should know and they should, know?
I like to think I'm a kind spirit.
Yeah.
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 But I will think about it. I often think if I ever live in an English speaking country again and I meet not just language related, but if I meet a foreigner who's or an expat or whatever, I think I'm going to be a lot more welcoming to them
Yes.
now that I've been on the other side.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of people have to live on both sides to figure that out.
Knowledge is power.
Savoir c'est pouvoir.
Eh oui.
Yeah, not bad, huh?
Bravo.
Sound like someone's been listening to the audiobook. But what I wanted to also talk about is let's scale it right back to this fear of even saying bonjour, right? But first, I want to do a quick anecdote.
Yes.
I used some slang verlan yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So I was in Montmartre and I was at a cheese shop with some lovely. They might be listening right now.
Okay.
Brian and Ashley, and we're in a cheese shop. And I said, I used to be scared of going to cheese shops, but now I own it. I was in there. I was like, yeah, let's get this. And at the end of it, he was kind of a cool dude, and we were trying to get about 20 euros worth of cheese. That was the goal. And at the end, it came to very close to 20 euros, and he was quite proud of himself, the guy behind the counter. And I said to him, bien wedge. Right? And he looked up, because obviously I'm a foreigner, I'm using this slang, which at home, guys, that's a really slang way to say well played. It's speaking backwards. It's the backwards slang. And then he looked at me so weird that I thought I got it wrong. And I said, I was speaking French, but I said, was that wrong of me to say that to you? And he goes, in a place like this, you're exactly right. Thank you. How about that?
That's so cool. So your expression for our listener, what you would usually say is bien joué.
Right.
Okay, bien joué, well played. And Oliver inverted. He said bien wedge, which is really young and verlan and so on.
Yeah.
It's something that he could afford to say from his, 30s.
Sure.
If I said that from my late 40s.
Right. So what would happen if you had said that?
Oh, I would feel totally stupid because
Really?
they're out of place. Like it's trying too hard.
How interesting is that?
But
I feel like he accepted me.
yeah.
Yeah.
How old was the guy?
I would say 33
That's
and
precise.
a half. Yeah.
How many months?
He was aged like a fine Comte, 33 and a half years. No, but it worked. It worked really well. And I obviously learned that slang on the basketball court.
Yeah.
That's
And that's very important. We had an episode when we talked about slang already. But for you listeners, slang is fun. But please, please, please make sure that you know the extent of the slang word.
Yeah.
Is it a slang, a colloquial, everyday slang, or is it a vulgar slang? And also, before you use slang, you have to analyze the person who's in front of you. The same as in your own language, actually. You're not going to use a slang word with the friend of your grandmother, probably. I mean,
you're not
I
going to say,
wish.
what's up, dog, to your grandpa.
Exactly.
Probably.
Exactly. So some grandpa may love it and so on,
True.
but some others maybe it's a lack of respect.
I think the takeaway with what you said last time was it's better to know the slang than use it.
It can be really fun to apply it in the right circumstance, but the circumstance has to be right. And the problem is that what I find with my students is that often, same thing as with me and swearing, slang gives them actually an extra confidence that, they're hip, they know that thing, and they overuse it. And some people tend to be overly casual in French because they know that side. And it's actually fun because they are not super casual persona in English.
Right.
So I always say, as a word of caution, when you speak a foreign language, it's always a little bit better, in my opinion, to be overly polite, overly educated, to choose vous rather than tu, because you're safe, okay? And it's also expected of a foreigner to not, speak in slang and speak with you using all this very cool and hip word. And also the big problem of slang is that if you use it right, it's perfect, But if you use it wrong, you're really gonna feel like a fool.
Yeah.
And same thing, like I would not say "What's up, dog?" in any circumstance. No. But you don't see me in the studio. But as I said, I'm 47, and pretty sophisticated. No, not quite. But it would be so out of place if I
No,
said,
you're
"Hey,
right.
yo, what's up, dog?"
Yeah, you're
You know?
right. You couldn't pull it off, Camille.
No, I can't. I'm sorry.
I was
No.
just thinking, you and I have come a long way because I remember in one of those early episodes, do you remember I thought that vous and tu
Yeah.
rhymed?
Yeah.
Vous and tu.
Yes, and they don't.
But I thought it was vous and tu. Remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
But let's time's running away as it always does. But let's talk about this right back to the basics. Bonjour.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience the people that I've gone shopping with in Paris. I always tell them what all the guests on the show have ever said. When you're in Paris or France, say bonjour. Just say it. Even if you say bonjour
Yeah.
and you get or whatever and you get it really wrong, it's better than walking in and saying nothing.
Absolutely.
Right? But people fear. So I know some people who fear doing that because they don't want to sound like a foreigner maybe, or they're nervous. What do you say to them, and how can they get over it?
I say exactly like you did. Do it. Just do it. It's a leap of faith. It's first of all, you're going to feel like $1,000,000 because it's wonderful when you do something that you are afraid of doing and you overcome this fear. It makes you feel great. You have a rush of adrenaline. A word I can't say, but
Who knows? Adrenaline.
yes, that word.
Yeah.
See, you have a tonic accent. Adrenaline. Or something
What is the
like that.
tonic thing again? What is
It's where you, in English, it's conquer or conquer.
it? Yeah,
Okay, two different meanings.
sure.
But same, you say con and you say cur. Okay, but whether you say conquer or concur,
Yeah, concur and
so
conquer.
that's
yeah.
the tonic accent, and we don't have that in French.
As in, you
So-
can put a stress on different syllables in English, but you can't in French.
So
yeah,
that's
okay.
why in French I can say adrénaline. Voilà,
Right.
adrénaline.
So there's always going to be a stress on one syllable in French.
No. See, I don't have a stress.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Adrénaline.
Yeah.
Adrénaline.
And in Italian, it's always on the second last syllable.
And
Pizza,
in English,
Maria.
say it again in English, that word.
What, pizza?
No.
Adrenaline.
See?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Yes.
And
second
for
one.
me, I can't say it. It does not sound right. If I said adrenaline, it doesn't work.
Adrenaline. Yeah,
Adrenaline.
Interesting.
Otherwise, it does not
It's
flow nicely.
English is complicated.
It is
like,
super complicated, you
record
guys.
and record.
Yes, all this.
Record,
And
yeah.
don't get me started on the preposition.
I shan't. Don't worry. I
Yeah.
don't, because I want to go back to that leap of faith, because that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
interesting what you were talking
Yeah.
about.
The leap of faith that will make you feel great when you do it. And as Oliver said, in France, it is really common courtesy, basic politeness to say bonjour. In Paris, even more so if you are outside of Paris. Like when in Paimpol, where I live right now in Brittany, we even say we even say bonjour to people we cross path on a walk.
Yeah.
For example.
I've seen it. I've been on a walk with you in Paimpol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful up
Yeah.
there.
And you walk along the sea,
That's
au
right.
bord de la mer.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a crowd. We're not in Saint-Tropez or things like that. And as you cross path with total stranger that you've never seen, you will never see them again, you say bonjour. Okay? And they do that sometimes in the US, like
Yeah.
in the countryside in the US. I'm accustomed to doing that also. But yeah, you have to do it. It's expected of you. And so do it, and you'll feel good. I promise you will feel good.
Take the leap of faith, guys. You know the thing, and then if the person turns to you and speaks really quick French, if you're an absolute beginner, you can say, I'm sorry, I don't speak French, I'm
Yeah.
doing my best. And also, I've noticed at my level of French, if someone speaks way too quick or I don't understand them, I quite like to say, excusez-moi, vous parlez trop rapidement pour moi.
Oui, c'est parfait.
You speak
Ouais.
too quickly for me.
Ouais.
And then if they're on the phone and they're like a sort of admin kind of person, they don't usually slow down because they don't really seem
Yeah.
to care. But often people will go, oh, I'm sorry. Look,
Yeah.
I forget myself.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
speak a bit slower.
Yeah, you can say also just s'il vous plaît, plus lentement.
Yeah.
Okay, plus lentement, and you do the sign, with your hand, like slow down,
Yeah.
like that, and it will help. Kind of going to another subject there, but French people will tend to use English if they know English. They think it's polite. It's actually, we were brought with the idea that if you speak another person's language, it's courtesy to actually extend, and even if their English is worse than your French,
Yeah, right.
okay, Plus, they want to use their English because, come on, you know, English is so important nowadays in our economy. Plus, it's a hip language.
It's hip.
Voilà. Yeah, it's
For sure.
for you know, in France, everybody dreams of going to New York.
Yep.
It's still the dreamland.
Or
and the
Australia. A
or
lot of young people I
Australia.
meet.
They want to go
Yeah.
there, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and England too, you guys. I mean, it's really the same way as a lot of people out there dream of going to Paris. So
And
the
you
Parisians,
guys
they
are
want-
listening
they want
right
to
now, aren't there,
travel.
aren't you? We're talking to the right people. Okay, but we've been talking for half an hour. Time has flown, as it always does.
Yes.
But I think the big takeaway, guys, is don't feel bad.
Yeah, don't feel bad. Feel good about yourself. Do it and try to be humble. It's not easy, believe me. I know. I mean, yeah, I know. I understand. I feel your pain. But there's no way around it. When you speak in another language, you can't, at first at least, and for a long, long time, not have the mastery that you have in your own. So it's okay. It's okay. And you guys, I hope, don't judge me for all the mistakes that I make or for my accent. Maybe actually you like this little French accent that I can push it. I can speak it. It's even more like French like that.
There are some French people who do that. They have their English personality with a fake
yeah.
French. I've seen it. I'm not naming names, but there are several people doing that. And some of them have
Absolutely.
been on this show. But anyway, listen, let's round it up. You guys, a little reminder. One of the best ways, we haven't talked about it at all. This is more a sort of, it felt a bit like a therapy session, didn't it? I should have had the
For me,
chaise
it
longue,
did,
you know?
actually.
Me too.
Merci,
me too, me
Olivier.
too.
C'était
But-
super. Oliver, see, I just call you Olivier.
But what I want to say, guys, we didn't talk about it all in this episode, but the idea is if you want to improve your French, I've talked about it a lot on the show before, but Camille's method on French Today, it's audiobooks, it's a lot. You guys know what I'm talking about. If not, go and check it out. French Today is the company. If you go to frenchtoday.com/earful6, they'll automatically take 10% off any of the audiobooks that you buy. But it's a really great way to learn language. That's how I'm doing it. Go and get your teeth into it. But Camille, thank you for coming into the studio.
Merci beaucoup à toi.
Maybe I'll see you in Paimpol next time.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome anytime with Lina. That would be great.
All right, you've said it now. It's on the air. We're going to do it. Thanks for coming in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Au revoir.